Hello folks, welcome back to Chris White Reports. The pace of collapse is accelerating in South Africa as this electricity generating capacity is tapped out. Eskom is at the point where South Africa is about to enter stage 8 load shedding. Stage 8 load shedding. Let me explain to folks around the world what that means. That means that people will be without electricity who pay for electricity in a country that has a grid for 12 to 14 hours per day. This is unacceptable, and this is a consequence of the ineptitude and corruption of the African National Congress-led government. 12 to 14 hours per day. Now, the company has managed to avoid this under the leadership of Andre de Ruyter, who recently resigned, and of course someone attempted to assassinate him the same day, poisoning him with cyanide. This has been verified by medical reports and by a police case that he filed against an attempted murder on his person. But Eskom, during the past year, now their year runs through April of this year, so it's not over yet. They've spent 12 billion rand to purchase diesel because of this slavish devotion to the just energy transition, the dreams of environmental wackos from Europe and North America. As a consequence, they've been trying to shut down their coal-fired power plants without bringing online a substitute that can match the capacity of these plants. 80% of the electricity in South Africa is currently generated by coal-fired power stations, which were all built, with the exception of Medupi, for the most part, over 30 years ago, some 40 and 50 years ago by the National Party under the apartheid era. The African National Congress has squandered 3 decades chasing away qualified engineers because of their ethnicity and their skin pigmentation, forcing them to go abroad to find employment in their racist policies against minority South Africans. They've had corrupt tenders, issuing contracts to non-existent companies, diverting money to families, diverting patronage, stuffing boards full of inept, incompetent fools who simply are there to make money and not to lead the company. It is a disaster of epic proportions and has been building for the better part of the last 2 decades of this millennium. Now, as I mentioned, 12 billion rand. That turns out to be about $711 million to stave off the worst levels of load shedding. That's crazy. Nearly $1 billion to buy diesel fuel. And part of the problem here is because the cost of diesel is so high, South Africa has destroyed or let its refining capacity just simply evaporate. They no longer refine fuels, so they have to import it already refined, additional cost. Even at conservative estimations of burning diesel to keep the country at stage 6, which is where they're at right now, it would cost another 6 billion rand for diesel to get to April 1st. Eskom doesn't have 6 billion rand, despite just getting an 18.65% increase in rates, which won't take place until April 1st. Now, News 24, South African media outlet, claims that Eskom had 59% of its generating capacity offline this week. Now, that's a shocking figure. The number they use that comes after that is in line with what I said, 23,780 megawatts of power capacity generation offline. Can you imagine that? 59% of your ability to generate electricity does not exist. Does not exist. It's simply not there. Why? Sabotage, incompetence, unplanned maintenance, failures, a lack of strategic vision, a lack of leadership, and of course, sleep at the wheel leadership from the national government, ruled by the African National Congress since its inception in 1994 as the party in power. And they have neglected and used Eskom as a personal piggy bank and patronage machine. And this is what South Africans are left with. This is what they're left with. It's really, really sad. And the damage goes far beyond what people talk about. People, well, it's inconvenient not to have electricity. Well, it is. It's also life-threatening. It's endangering. Robots, traffic lights go out. People have accidents unnecessarily. Pedestrians hit by cars because lights are not going out instantaneously. Respirators failing in hospitals. Lights going out in the middle of an operation for a hospital that doesn't have adequate or functioning generators for backup. The additional cost of doing business by providing your own generation capacity. The damage to electronics and to lights and to appliances every time power fluctuates, surges, drops, comes back up, shortening the lifespan, costing billions of dollars in unnecessary replacement costs for early replacement of electronics, appliances, lights, and other things. Work stoppages, massive electricity consumers like the platinum industry in Northwest Province, which rely heavily on electricity, just can't do business. The gold mines. You can't send people into the mines without electricity. You have to pump out the heat and pump out the carbon dioxide and methane and pump in fresh air and light. Unbelievable, folks. This is the most inept government in Africa, arguably. I mean, there are dictatorships in Africa that are run better than this. There are failed states. Somalia at one point, some point soon, might even be considered a better government. Yes, that's hyperbole. That's hyperbole. But seriously, this government is a disaster. Today, the Democratic Alliance, under the leadership of John Steenhuisen, announced a march on Lutuli House on the 25th of January to protest against this rate increase on the 1st of April of 18.65%. Well, thank you, DA. It's nice, but it's about 20-some years late. This attention to the crisis would have been helpful if you had strategic vision that pointed this out, like some of us did 15, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, hell, even 3 years ago at the start of the scam. It would have been nice to point this out or have this protest march. Where were you during lockdown? Where were you when businesses were destroyed in South Africa? Your party was silent. Now, the DA can lead this march, and I wish them well, but it can't be a march simply about rate hikes. That's ludicrous. An opposition party complaining about a government they're part of. They're not the ruling part of it, but they're part of a government whose bureaucracy is raising the rates. The regulators approving it for your government-owned and parastatal. So while you don't control it, you're in the government. This has to be a march about something more than just rate increases. It has to be about the total ineptitude, the racketeering practices of the African National Congress, the pervasive corruption, Pala Pala scandal, the Vreda Farm scandal, the asbestos contract in the Free State with Ace Magashule, Zandile Gumeda's dozens of criminal allegations have yet to come to court. Julius Malema's race hustling, firing a dangerous firearm to the air, and someone changing the receiver to deceive the police. No accountability whatsoever in this country. And a march on Lutuli House, the headquarters of the African National Congress, to complain about electricity rates is not going to get it done. It needs to be about a lot more than that. Folks, South Africa is on the verge of imploding. That's not hyperbole. Sad is what that is. That is sad. Really, really sad. Well, hang in there. It is going to be a bumpy ride.